Hello and welcome to the first video in my series covering chess openings. In our last video, we completed the series on how chess pieces move, and in this video, we're going to start learning our first ever chess opening. So before we learn this chess opening, I'm just going to teach you notation. So basically in chess, notation makes it easier to understand the language of chess. So for example, if I push a piece or if I move any piece, you guys will be able to understand what I said much easier. So basically, the way that you learn notation is that it's like a graph. So here, as you could see, there's numbers on the sides of the board, and there's also letters on the side of the board too. So it's kind of like a graph, and say if I move a piece, so using this graph knowledge of E and 4, we can conclude that this move is pawn to E4. So here, say that we move a knight, so we move a knight 1, 2 side, we could see that it's on F and 3, so we could say knight to F3. So that was chess notation, and now we're going to actually get into openings. So the first ever chess opening that we're going to learn is called the Italian game. So the Italian game starts with E4 by pushing our pawn 2 squares and E5 from black. So here we get a very common resemblance of chess where both pawns are in the center and they are taking space from the other side. So as we can see, black's taking space on this square and white's trying to take space from this square. Okay, so the game continues and white brings his knight out. So now we could see that this knight, knowing that it moves 1, 2 side, is right now attacking this black pawn. And if black were to do something silly, like not defend this pawn, so for example, if he just pushes another pawn, we could just take this pawn and, well, now we're winning. So that wouldn't be a good idea. So here, black generally can either counterattack our pawn, like this, by pulling his knight out, just like we did, or he could bring his knight out and defend this pawn. So most commonly, we could see that black brings his knight out and defends his pawn. And the reason is, if you were to go on the offensive as black, you'd always be one square down, or one move down. So what I mean by this is, as you could see, right now it's white's turn. And basically, white gets to decide the tone of the game, whether he'd pin this knight by playing his bishop here and preventing this knight from moving, or if he wanted to push his pawn. Now that's up to white. So that's why black generally does not like to do symmetrical stuff, and instead he goes with asymmetrical. So here we can now bring out our bishop here, and here we reach the Italian opening. So resemblance of the Italian opening is when this bishop is out on this long diagonal. And the reason is that this bishop is targeting this pawn right here. And this pawn is very weak in later stages of the game, as we could see. So here, there's a number of moves that black could play. So the most common move is black also brings his bishop out and also starts to attack our weak pawn right here, which is only defended by the king. So here, as white, we have a variety of moves that we could play here. So for example, the main move, and the move that makes the most sense, as in the Italian opening, you want to occupy the center, which is this square right here especially. However, if we were to push our pawn right here, black could simply take well, not with that, but black could simply take, and here, as we could see, after black takes and white takes, now, well, we just lost a pawn as white. As we could see, we only have 6 pawns versus black's 7. So that would not be a good choice. So that's why we play this move called C3. And there's also another couple points of C3, which can be to sometimes put this queen here and put a lot of pressure on this pawn, or to sometimes take our bishop back and just to simply put it in this small low space to keep it safe. So from here, the main move that black could play is bring his knight out to then attack our pawn, as we didn't really protect our pawn earlier. Then we protect our pawn with our move, with our pawn here. As we could see, this pawn is now protected. And now black goes back with his pawn just to open up his bishop and potentially bring it out. And here especially, black would like to bring his bishop out here, where it's going to stop our knight from moving. And as you could see later, we really do not want this knight to be stopped from moving. So here, white can castle by moving his king over 2 squares. And well, here black plays this move right here, simply bringing his pawn 1 square forward. Or this can be called a6, as we could see right here. So here, the main line, or the most important and critical line, is white goes back with his bishop. And the reason white goes back with his bishop here in this position is that this knight right now would like to go here and eat up this bishop, as this bishop right here produces a lot of power along this diagonal for future attacks. So this is why black would really like to go here, and basically there's no other way to get rid of the bishop from this square where it's safe. So this is why white brings his bishop back. Then we could also see that black would like to do the same thing, because right now white is threatening to simply push this pawn forward, as it will attack the bishop, and as we know, black would not be able to just capture this pawn. So for example, let's just say that we push this pawn right away, which is also possible. We could see that now white has a very strong center, however, it's currently under attack and it could be a little bit loose. So this is why white should take his bishop back first. So here, after this, for example, black will also bring his bishop back to prevent this idea, where then black would be able to eat up this pawn that would be undefended. And here, say, white brings his knight out to defend this, which is a part of the main line. And here this white knight has a very clear plan. So this knight's plan is to go from here to then go here, or to e3 or to g3. So knight to d2 to f1 to e3 g3, and then hopefully land on this square. And that's also the same case with this black knight. So for example, black would really like to go to this h5 square on the side of the board and go here. And as we could see, the common theme of this position is that both sides would like to get their knight on either the square of f4 or f5, because these two squares are very powerful and they could be helpful for attacking the white king or the black king. So that's why these knights have plans to go to f5 or f4. Okay, so here black should castle, as to prevent any bishops sometimes can capture this again. And now white can push his pawn and black can push his pawn forward to prevent any bishop ideas that block the knight. Also similar here for white. And now I'll just really zoom through this theory because it's not really relevant for the level that we're looking at. So here black is forced to trade, as this knight is attacking his knight and his queen. So here black would have to trade and get this position. And here in this position, there's a clear common idea, which is to, after black plays his knight here, of course, to get rid of here, is to open up the center and have a good game. So here is white. We could see that black is really restricted and white should have the upper hand. So going back to this position, here, black also has another move that he could play, which is playing his knight out here. And the reason to do this is, as we could see, these two knights are really getting in the center. And now white has a lot of pressure in the center, black has a lot of pressure in the center against white. So here, the most common move for white to defend this pawn and to also counterattack is to play his knight out here. So as we could see, the knight's now defending this and the knight is attacking this pawn on f7 along with the bishop. So black only has one real defense, and that is to push his pawn forward. And after this pawn is pushed, we could just simply take it as white, and well, here we will be up a pawn. As after, well, this would be a mistake, but say that black takes, which is a very common move amongst beginners. So here, if you remember this trick, you could even catch some really new players to chess, and you could win a couple games very easily. And here you could win many games very easily. So here now white would take this pawn, which it looks really weird as now the bishop is not protecting this knight as it's stuck with this black knight. However, after black takes, the queen just attacks the knight and the king, and now black is in severe trouble. So here a common trap is just black goes back, and well, we get this, and it's checkmate, as the black king is stuck here, and these two pieces are not helping him move anywhere elsewhere. For example, this bishop is just blocking his movement to the left, and this pawn, as we know, the black king cannot just move over his own pawns or his pieces. So here we could conclude that this is checkmate. But the main move is after black plays his king out, all the way in the open, it's pretty much game over for black. And the reason is after we just play our knight here, even though the chess engine says that this position is equal, as a human, you're not expected to play all the perfect moves up till the end. So, well, after black just protects his knight, white can castle. And even though white is down one knight, we could see that while this black king is really restricted in squares, like the queen's chopping here, and if the king were to move back, we could always just take his knight here. So here it's clear that white's just better and is probably going to win the game. So going back here, you do, however, have to be aware of one thing, and that is that black can also trick you here in this position and instead counterattack and play his bishop out here. And here it would be devastating for white to just simply take this pawn. And as a beginner or newer player, you would think that, well, this knight attacks the queen and the rook and I'm winning, at least a rook here. However, it actually just leads to the loss of the game, or at least a draw for black after black takes this pawn. And after the king can take, black takes with his knight. And yep, and now black is open to many ideas like playing his queen out here. You can also get this knight involved in the action, and it's just a really bad position. Okay, so in this video we learned the main theory of the Italian opening, and we also learned notation. In my next video we're going to further discuss the Italian opening, and we're also going to learn a couple more variations. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next video.